When you need to show content from a PDF file inside of the Classin program, especially if that PDF happens to be hosted on your Classin library and you don't have access to it, which that's going to be a problem for a lot of teachers, especially if you have a Chinese employer. They're always worried about somebody's going to steal their golden egg, right? So it's a common situation that they'll give you a PDF file, but the only way you can display that is within the PDF viewer of the Classin program itself. And that PDF viewer does not feature the ability to zoom in on content so that you can display text. And sometimes the text is going to be a little bit small. So one thing that I like to do is, I'll show how I start out. First, I'll just open up the PDF file that I've been given. I'll drag it down to set it so that the bottom right hand corner of that is flush with the bottom of the screen and pretty close, but not overlapping with any of the control buttons on the right hand side of my screen. Next, we stretch it, get centered on a page, and then stretch it up vertically so that you can display as much of that page as possible, and then stretch it horizontally. And try to get it so that ideally you're able to display one page as big as possible. And what we're going to do next is use a program to take screenshots. And then we'll paste our screenshot into the left-hand side of the page. During the time that you're teaching, you're going to be adding notes along the right-hand side of the page. So you want your images to be on the left. And once your image is placed, you want to bring it flush with the left-hand side of the screen, not with this kind of wooden border on the left, but actually to the very edge of the screen. And once you have your image pasted in, what you can do is select it and then use your arrow keys to have very fine positioning and move it just one pixel at a time. So now this is flush with the left-hand side of my screen. My next step is going to be resizing this image so that it matches the last page that I did, as close as I can get it. And now I'm using my arrow keys to move it back down again. We're just getting it into position. And if you look right here, I am off by about 2 or 3 pixels. So I'll just use my arrow keys to reposition. And now I have this completely flush on the right hand side of the page. And so my entire file is going to be like that, just keeping everything as flush as possible. That looks more professional. There will be times when your employer is probably going to take a look at your work. Now, one little trick is that you can only use your scroll wheel to move up and down inside of a PDF file, but if you click on I don't know what to call this. If you click on the part that moves up and down as you're scrolling, after clicking on that, now you can use your arrow keys, and you will be able to step the page up just a little bit or down a smaller amount than what your scroll wheel will give you. So you get better fine control, and that's going to help you to get your pictures. One thing a lot of new teachers do when they're working with doing this kind of stuff is they will take a screenshot that goes from here to here. But on this particular page, there's no background, there's just color. And I want my text to be as big as possible. So I can just focus on the part of this that matters. I don't need the whole page. And so after I get this pasted in, then when I resize it, my text is going to be a lot bigger. And I like that. That makes it much easier to read, which is the reason why I'm going through this process anyway, is because the PDF viewer that's native to Classin doesn't let you zoom in, and sometimes your text is going to be too small. So what I'm doing here is one way to deal with that. Another thing that you can do is you can take a picture of your text and then drop that in right on top of your work. Like, this is kind of a confined space, but what I can do is kind of go like this. Now, if I had a little bit more space above and below this block of text, I can make it a lot bigger if I wanted to. And another thing you can do is you can put your text off to the side of a page. Let's find a good page to demonstrate this. Just for demonstration purposes. Let's say this is the page that I got. And my text is too small. So I can go kind of like that. And if it's still too small, then I can put my text off to the side and make it even a bit bigger. Now it looks weird and it's a little distracting having the text show up twice in the same page. So I'll just copy and paste part of the image and I'll just cover it up. Nobody would have ever known that there was text over here. And now I have my text off to the side and it's nice and big. I can go as big as I want and it's still going to look pretty good. I go across the whole page if I want. So if you're ever dealing with the need to make your text a bit bigger in Classin and you don't have access to the PDF file because that's the golden egg and your employer thinks you're going to steal it from them, then there you go. Here's a number of strategies to help you cope with all that. And improve the quality of your teaching tools. Sometimes there will be pages in a book which are supposed to be viewed side by side. For example, there might be a character on the left page interacting with a character or something else on the right page, or there might even be some text that is supposed to be seen with the pages together. Like there's a character on the left and the text is on the right, and you want to show those pages side by side inside of Classin, but you want it to look good too. So what you can do is start out by getting your left hand page flush with the left side of your screen, and then scroll down a little bit, get kind of close to kind of like this. You want to get the page positioned up to the top of the page fairly closely, and what you're going to do is look at the rectangle that is showing your camera and try to get that page sized up so that the right hand side of the page is touching just about the center. Then go to your other page and get that sized. And now, after doing that, both pages are just about the same size, but the image doesn't line up. Sometimes that's going to be an issue. So use your fine control to find something like this toaster here. And what I'm going to do is try to make the bottom part of the toaster line up. You're always going to try and line up either the bottom or the top. I got the bottom lined up now, so the bottom looks good. Now I'm going to resize it a little bit. Resize it again. Reposition, line it up again, and kind of keep going back and forth until it looks just about right. There we go. Now at this point we can see that the top image, we can see that the left hand image doesn't align up perfectly with the top of the right hand image. There's this little step here, but at least the stuff in the middle is lining up fairly nicely. You know, it looks good enough. And part of my concern is that I just want this stuff to look good to parents and also to my employer when they might be doing something like looking at a recording of a class or just observing a class. I want them to see my work and feel like it's showing a little bit better quality than my peers, because I want to be chosen when new classes open up. I want to be known as the guy that is the best teacher when it comes to using the software for doing online classes. If you do a good job, you'll get more hours, essentially. So that's a technique you can use to make two pages line up fairly well. And sometimes Classin will give you a limitation on how many images can be in your teaching file. And when that happens, if I have any pages that are side by side, I'll take a screenshot after I got both of those pages fit together. And then after I have my screenshot taken, I can delete both of those pages, put in the screenshot. Now I'm turning two images into just one so that my image count remains low. Here's a good example of what I was talking about. We have two pages. One of the pages has characters. The image is kind of cut in half, and there's not even any words on the left-hand page. So, following my advice from before, we start with the left-hand page and try to get it so that it lines up with the center of the camera. I'll get the page on the right lined up, looking good. That's pretty good. Not too bad. The top of the page, or the top of this table, is flush. It looks pretty seamless going from the left to the right hand page side. The bottom isn't, but that's okay. If I'm going to have stuff mismatched on the image itself, then I want that to happen on the bottom, not on the top. It looks better this way. You see the top part of it first, and by the time students are done reading the words over here, they're not going to be looking at this over here. So we're good. Now I got my two pages side by side. It looks flush. I could leave it like the way it is, or I could resize these just a bit. And turn it into one picture. And when I do that, that's going to give me the opportunity to make some further corrections. Like the top of this, on the left, it's a few pixels high. On the right, it's a few pixels low. So what I'm going to do is I'll take a screenshot that doesn't show that problem on the top or on the bottom. Now I can delete that, paste it in, and look at this. The image itself, everything is flush on the inside of it, and there's no more left and right side that have a mismatch at the top or the bottom. That looks pretty darn good.